Do you think the Babadook is just a fictional monster from a 2014 horror film? What if I told you that the entity known as Mr. Babadook has been terrorizing families for over a century? That the film wasn't fiction, but a desperate warning disguised as entertainment? Tonight, I'm going to reveal the disturbing truth behind one of the most persistent supernatural phenomena ever documented. A truth powerful institutions have worked tirelessly to suppress. It begins in 1903, Adelaide, Australia. A time when the city was experiencing unprecedented growth, its population swelling as the Federation of Australia took shape. In the suburb of Norwood, bookbinder Wilhelm Hoffman lived with his wife and young son in a modest Victorian home on William Street. Hoffman specialized in the restoration of rare books, often working late into the night in his basement workshop. His reputation for quality craftsmanship attracted clients from as far as Melbourne and Sydney, including universities, private collectors, and occasionally organizations with more esoteric interests. In March of that year, Hoffman received a package from an anonymous client. Inside was a severely damaged book with instructions to rebind it and return it to a post office box in Sydney. The book itself was unusual, bound in what appeared to be black leather, with no title on its cover or spine. The pages were filled with strange illustrations and text in multiple languages, some of which Hoffman couldn't identify. Most disturbing were the pop-up elements, intricate paper constructions that formed three-dimensional figures when the pages were opened. According to the journal Hoffman kept, he began experiencing strange phenomena almost immediately after bringing the book into his home. First came the sounds, knocking from within the walls, always in sets of 3. Then, shadows moving at the periphery of his vision. His son, Friedrich, began screaming in the night about a tall man standing in the corner of his bedroom. Within weeks, Hoffman's wife fell into a deep depression, refusing to leave their bedroom. On April 17, 1903, Wilhelm Hoffman's house burned to the ground. The official report cited faulty electrical wiring, though electricity had not yet been installed in that section of William Street. The bodies of Hoffman and his wife were recovered, but their son Friedrich was never found. Neither was the mysterious book Hoffman had been restoring. The only surviving document was a single page from Hoffman's journal, recovered from his workshop, which had been separated from the main house. On it, Hoffman had sketched a tall, pale figure in a black coat with unnaturally long fingers and a top hat. Beneath it, he had written a single word: Babaduk. For decades, the Hoffman incident remained a footnote in Adelaide's history, mentioned occasionally in compilations of local ghost stories. But it wasn't isolated. In 1927, psychologist Eleanor Thorne documented a case involving 7-year-old Robert Graves, who claimed to be terrorized by a tall man in a black coat who emerged from a pop-up book. Thorne initially diagnosed the boy with simple night terrors until she witnessed objects moving in the Graves household during her 5th visit. Her detailed case notes, filed with the Royal Adelaide Hospital, were subsequently sealed and classified as medically sensitive. They remained inaccessible until 1978, when portions were released under the Freedom of Information Act. The pattern continued. In 1944, police were called to the home of Margaret and Thomas Burton in the suburb of Prospect after neighbors reported screams. They found Margaret in a catatonic state and Thomas dead from an apparent self-inflicted wound. Their 6-year-old daughter told authorities that Mr. Babaduk had been visiting for weeks, ever since her father found the black book while clearing out a deceased neighbor's home. The girl was placed in psychiatric care, where she reportedly drew the same figure Hoffman had sketched 4 decades earlier: tall, pale, with elongated fingers and a distinctive top hat. By the 1950s, reports bearing similarities to the Babaduk phenomenon began appearing throughout South Australia. What connected them was consistent. A mysterious book would appear, followed by knocking sounds, progressive psychological deterioration, and ultimately, violence. Children were almost always involved, and in each case, they described the same entity. Official explanations ranged from mass hysteria to carbon monoxide poisoning to family annihilator scenarios. But investigating officers frequently noted inconsistencies they couldn't explain. Perhaps most disturbing was the fate of those who investigated too deeply. In 1963, Adelaide Chronicle journalist Peter Whitman began researching historical incidents matching the Babadook pattern. 6 weeks into his investigation, Whitman's wife reported him missing. Police found his diary, research materials scattered across his home office, pages torn from books, and a half-finished article on his typewriter. The final sentence read, "The Babadook is not a legend or mass delusion. It is something far worse." The rest was never found. Neither was Whitman. 3 months after Whitman's disappearance, an anonymous package arrived at the offices of the Adelaide Chronicle. Inside was what appeared to be a children's pop-up book, bound in black. The book was immediately secured by government officials, citing public safety concerns. All staff members who had contact with the package were required to sign confidentiality agreements. The incident was never reported. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, the pattern continued, though reports became increasingly difficult to track as official channels began classifying such incidents under various codes. What we do know comes from scattered police reports, psychiatric evaluations, and the testimony of those peripheral to the cases. Neighbors, extended family members, and occasionally first responders who spoke out despite warnings. Dr. Amelia Vanek, a psychiatrist at Glenside Hospital from 1975 to 1992, treated multiple patients who described encounters with the entity they called Babaduk. In her unpublished research, Vanek noted striking similarities across cases spanning decades: the appearance of a mysterious book, progressive insomnia, auditory hallucinations beginning with knocking sounds, and an escalating urge toward violence, particularly directed at children. Vanek's research was defunded in 1992, and her request to publish her findings was denied by the hospital board. She died in a single-car accident 3 weeks later. Her research notes were confiscated from her office and home within hours of her death. By the late 1990s, reports matching the Babadook pattern had spread beyond South Australia, appearing throughout the country and, increasingly internationally. Internet forums devoted to paranormal phenomena began connecting cases across continents, from Melbourne to Manchester, Sydney to Seattle. What remained consistent was the entity's appearance, its methodology, and its focus on families with young children. In 2005, paranormal researcher David Chen compiled 37 separate cases dating back to 1903 that matched the core characteristics of the Babadook phenomenon. His self-published report, The Persistent Pattern, A Century of the Babadook Entity, circulated briefly online before disappearing from every platform. Chen himself stopped posting online abruptly in November 2005. Attempts to contact him by fellow researchers were unsuccessful. His last known communication was an email to colleague Sarah Winters that read, "I found the book. It found me back. If anything happens, tell them it's real." Which brings us to Jennifer Kent, the Australian filmmaker credited with creating The Babadook as a fictional horror film released in 2014. The official narrative states that Kent wrote the screenplay based on her own imagination, developing a metaphorical monster to represent grief and depression. But several inconsistencies suggest a different truth. First, there's the matter of Kent's research. Multiple sources confirm she spent months in the South Australian State Library archives, focusing specifically on historical incidents involving family tragedies. Second, an early draft of the screenplay, obtained from a production assistant who wishes to remain anonymous, contained significantly more specific historical references, including direct mentions of Wilhelm Hoffman and Eleanor Thorne's case notes, all of which were removed from the final version. Third, in an interview that was quickly retracted, Kent stated that the design of the Babadook came from historical descriptions rather than her imagination. Most telling is what happened during the film's production. Crew members reported numerous unexplained incidents, equipment failures, strange sounds on set, and pages of the script being mysteriously altered overnight. The prop book created for the film repeatedly went missing, only to reappear in unexpected locations. 3 crew members quit without explanation midway through filming. The production designer was hospitalized after a nervous breakdown during which she claimed that the Babadook had come through the prop book they'd created. Following the film's release, several incidents occurred that have been carefully scrubbed from public record. A projectionist in Sydney claimed to have seen additional scenes playing during a regular screening. Scenes showing the Babadook attacking real families, scenes that weren't in the official cut. A family in Brisbane reported that their copy of the DVD would play different content when no one was directly watching the screen. Most disturbing were the reports from multiple viewers who claimed to have found black pop-up books appearing in their homes days after watching the film. Within months of these reports, all physical copies of the Babadook were quietly recalled due to manufacturing defects. The digital version was temporarily removed from streaming platforms for remastering. When it returned, viewers reported subtle differences in certain scenes, particularly those showing the book itself. Frame-by-frame analysis confirmed that the text visible in the book had been altered between versions. Jennifer Kent has given no interviews about the Babadook since 2015. Her scheduled follow-up film was indefinitely postponed, and she retreated from public life for nearly 3 years. When she re-emerged to direct The Nightingale in 2018, she refused to answer any questions about her previous work. Those close to the production report that she had a strict rule: no one was permitted to mention the Babadook or bring any materials related to it onto the set of her new film. But perhaps most chilling is what happened to those who have investigated too deeply into the connection between the film and the historical phenomenon. Film critic Richard Matheson published an article in 2016 titled "The Real Horror Behind the Babadook," detailing parallels between the film and documented cases dating back to the early 1900s. The article was removed within hours of publication, and Matheson's professional social media accounts went silent. His last tweet, posted minutes before his accounts were deactivated, read simply, "It's in my house now. Babaduk Duke Duke." In 2018, graduate student Eliza Sharma began researching the Babadook phenomenon for her doctoral dissertation in folklore studies at the University of Melbourne. 6 months into her research, university officials terminated her project, citing ethical concerns. Sharma continued her research independently, maintaining detailed notes on a private blog. The blog disappeared in November 2019, replaced with a single black page containing white text that read, "You can't get rid of the Babadook." Sharma has not been active online since. What's particularly disturbing is how the pattern has accelerated since the film's release. Between 2015 and 2023, reports matching the core characteristics of Babadook encounters increased by 340% worldwide. Police departments across multiple countries have begun using internal classification codes for cases involving specific elements. Black books appearing without explanation, knocking sounds, progressive insomnia, and family violence preceded by children reporting a tall, pale visitor in black. In 2020, a cache of documents was anonymously uploaded to several dark web forums before being quickly removed. The documents appeared to be internal communications from an organization identified only as the Containment Initiative, discussing strategies for managing public awareness of the entity classified as Babaduk. The documents referenced information suppression protocols, media narrative, management, and most disturbing, incident cleanup teams. While these documents cannot be verified, their contents align perfectly with the pattern of suppression surrounding the Babadook phenomenon. The question remains, what exactly is the Babadook? The historical record suggests not a ghost or traditional supernatural entity, but something more complex, a manifestation that uses human perception and belief as a gateway. The book appears to be both its portal and prison, a physical anchor allowing it to cross into our reality. Once acknowledged, it cannot be banished, only managed, which aligns with the film's ultimate message. What makes the Babadook particularly insidious is how it weaponizes those who encounter it, turning them into instruments of violence and propagation. Each new awareness creates another potential vessel. Each telling of its story opens another door. This may explain the systematic suppression of information surrounding it, not to deny its existence, but to contain its spread. Consider the film's ending, in which the mother doesn't destroy the Babadook, but instead contains it in the basement, feeding it regularly to keep it subdued. This wasn't a metaphorical conclusion about living with grief, as the official interpretation suggests. It was a literal instruction manual, the only known method for surviving an encounter with the entity. Those who try to destroy it, deny it, or escape it become its victims. Only those who acknowledge it while refusing to surrender to it have survived. The pattern has become clearer in recent years. The entity manifests in 3 stages. First comes the book, appearing without explanation, then the knocking, always in sets of 3, followed by glimpses of the entity itself. Sleep disturbances intensify as the entity gains strength, accompanied by increasing aggression in the primary caregiver. In the final stage, the entity attempts to force the caregiver to commit violence against the child, completing the cycle. The only documented survivors are those who recognized the pattern and followed what we now call the Vanek Protocol, acknowledgement without surrender. In 2022, a formerly classified document from 1974 was discovered during the digitization of South Australia police archives. Titled Procedural Guidelines for Type B Domestic Incidents, it outlined specific steps for first responders dealing with cases matching the Babadook pattern. Most notable was the instruction to remove all written and artistic materials related to the entity, and discourage documentation or discussion of experiences by survivors. The document referenced an ongoing containment strategy dating back to 1953, suggesting organized awareness of the phenomenon extending back decades. What's perhaps most disturbing is how the release of Kent's film appears to have accelerated the phenomenon rather than contained it. By bringing the Babadook into mainstream awareness, the film may have unintentionally provided it with unprecedented access. The very narrative the film presents, that acknowledging the Babadook is the only way to survive it, creates the perfect conditions for its propagation. Viewers are simultaneously made aware of the entity and instructed to acknowledge it rather than deny it. And now, here we are. You're watching this video, learning about the Babadook's history, its patterns, its reality beyond the film. You're becoming aware. And in becoming aware, you may have already opened your door to it. Pay attention to your surroundings in the coming days. If books rearrange themselves on your shelves, if you hear knocking in sets of 3, if shadows seem to move at the edges of your vision, if sleep becomes increasingly difficult, these are the warning signs, the beginning of the cycle. Some of you are already feeling uneasy. Some of you have already experienced inexplicable phenomena that you dismissed. Some of you will close this video, try to forget what you've learned. Convince yourself it's just another internet horror story. That won't help you. The awareness has already taken root, so what can you do? The historical record offers only one effective response, documented across cases where individuals survived their encounters: acknowledgement without surrender. As Dr. Vanek wrote in her final notes before her death, the entity feeds on 2 things: denial and submission. Deny it, and it grows stronger in the shadows of your disbelief. Submit to it, and it consumes you entirely. The only path forward is conscious containment. If you've watched this far, you're already involved. The next time you notice a book out of place, or hear an unexpected knocking, or see movement in a darkened corner, don't deny what's happening. But don't give in to fear either. Acknowledge the presence calmly and set your boundaries firmly. For those experiencing initial signs already, take specific precautions. Keep a light on while sleeping. Avoid mirrors after midnight. Maintain physical contact with trusted others when possible. Most importantly, document everything. The entity thrives in isolation and darkness. Connection and documentation create accountability that appears to constrain its influence. As I conclude this investigation, I feel obligated to issue a warning. Some of you may already be in danger. Some of you have been experiencing the signs without recognizing them for what they are. Some of you will begin experiencing them soon. I've done my best to provide the information needed for survival, but knowledge alone isn't protection. It's just the beginning of awareness. If you found value in this revelation, leave a comment saying simply, "I acknowledge." This serves 2 purposes. It helps others find this information, and it establishes your conscious awareness of the entity, the first step in the containment protocol. Subscribe for more suppressed truths that powerful. Institutions don't want revealed. Remember, the Babadook isn't just a movie monster. It's something far older and more persistent than Hollywood fiction. It was here before the film, before Wilhelm Hoffman's encounter in 1903, before the documented cases throughout the 20th century. It will continue long after this video ends. The only question is whether you'll recognize it when it comes knocking on your door. Bababa? Duk, duk, duk. You can't get rid of the Babadook.